Fuck. Brandon, what's going on? Yeah, this video is complete and utter sophistry. It is fucking hilarious how dishonest Frank is. It's just insane. Yeah, I haven't had any real computer problems yet. I just had to restart my computer for whatever reason. My audio interface was being fucking weird, but after I restarted it was fine. But otherwise, my new computer setup is fine. I swapped out parts with Jasmine, so now I've got an AMD Threadripper in this machine, and it's a lot better for streaming and recording than my old 5930K. And I think you can tell the quality on the stream is a little bit better than it normally is. I think you can tell. Yeah, I am going to make a response to Frank, and I don't know what why he thought he could get away with all these lies. It's really weird and bizarre. And we can even go through all of our Twitter DMs as well. They're quite interesting. I'll just go to the top. We'll cover the Twitter DMs after we look at this video. Let's just wait like a couple more minutes. I want at least 10 people in here so people can see from the start. What do you think about Elon Musk smoking weed on the Joe Rogan podcast? He shouldn't have done that, because now he lost his clearance level with the Air Force. I don't think that really affects his, overall business or anything, but, he probably just should have thought more about it. It's also funny, too, because, the left-leaning media, they're all like, oh, pro marijuana, everyone should be able to smoke, and then when Elon Musk does it, it becomes a huge problem. It's just fucking retarded horseshit. I made $550 on call options after the Tesla debacle. I don't know what you mean by that. $550 on call options. I don't know what that means. Okay, so because... Yeah, I think I missed last week's stream. I didn't stream for 2 weeks, so we'll make this stream double long, so this will go for 2 hours. We're going to go through Frank's lies and horseshit here. We're also going to go through all the Twitter DMs, because he lies about the Twitter DMs as well. Then we might talk about Dr. Eric Berg. First, I want to talk about this retard in his video on eggs. And if we have time, Mike O'Hearn has a website. And I guess this one woman or something, she writes articles on here, and she was saying why, yeah, Rachel Shear, she was like, this is, again, pure sophistry about, like, all these vitamin and mineral deficiencies vegans have. What's really weird about this, too, is it looks like she, like, referenced things here. There's, like, bibliographic references here, but then there's no actual bibliography. Like, you can't look up any of the links, so it's kind of strange. I don't think it was well thought out at all. Oh, so you just made some extra money after Elon Musk smoked weed on the Joe Rogan Experience? Okay, so let's start with this. Frank got utterly massacred in the debate. Basically, he came completely unprepared, which is not surprising. When you actually take a look at his videos, he never really references research. The best he'll ever do is he'll find some sort of, like, blog article. Like, I've seen him link Chris Kresser. So if he's talking about heart disease, he'll say something like, oh, it's being totally debunked, saturated fat, cholesterol never causes heart disease, here's a link, and then he'll link Chris Kresser and some blog article. So he's really dumb, like, very low IQ, definitely below average. He has no reading comprehension skills whatsoever, so it's not surprising that he wouldn't come prepared with research, because he literally can't read any of it. So, he got pissed off, and then, you know, to get back at me, he tried to lie about everything that happened. So let's just go through this horse shit.
So I don't want to make excuses from, you know, me not sleeping because of my work schedule to my stress with my personal and professional life over the past few days. I don't want that to be a factor in why I took this debate. The reason I took this debate was because I didn't think there was any such thing as bad publicity, and I prepared on the topics we had discussed beforehand. But
you literally did no preparing whatsoever.
He lied about the topics, which I will show.
I didn't lie about the topics. So, again, we can go through these Twitter DMs, but I made it very clear that I wanted to debate the health consequences of a carnivore diet, including heart disease, diabetes, and cancer, and that's exactly what we discussed.
Show in a minute, but one thing I want to say is I came into this with the utmost respect and professionalism, and you know, I charm everyone I meet in person. I figured I could do something.
This makes, like, when he says this shit, he reminds me of Elliot Rodgers. He seems like fucking autistic and shit. Like, I charm everybody I meet. I'm a supreme gentleman. Just look at his fucking eyebrows and that weird fucking blank stare. This guy has autism.
Of the same effect on him. So I went in with respect for him, and unfortunately that was not in my best interest. So I respected the topics he chose. I didn't look up any research outside of those topics, anything like that. And
we discussed heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and the general overall health effects of a carnivore diet. We didn't go outside of those topics. So I don't know what the fuck he's even talking about.
I could have brought up a million things in regards to vegans' diets being deficient, negative things that have happened to vegans.
Well, what do you mean? You did. Like, you brought, like, that was actually a point you made that you wanted to discuss. I wanted to debate the bioavailability of fat-soluble vitamins in plants, and we did discuss that during the debate. You were talking about how, because vegan diets tend to be lower in fat, and there aren't things like fully formed vitamin A in our diet, and we have to rely on provitamin A carotenoids, you were trying to suggest that we have a higher risk of vitamin and mineral deficiencies, and I debunked that claim. I said, no, vegans don't have a higher rate of any of these vitamin or mineral deficiencies. I linked a very recent study out of Switzerland, even showing vegans aren't, like, tend to be, like, they're not even at a higher rate of B12 deficiency, which a lot of research decades ago did show. So, and then I asked you to provide evidence for your claims. Do you have any evidence that vegans are at higher risk of deficiency in these fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin A, vitamin D? And you couldn't provide any fucking evidence. So, like, what? This is just a completely made up fucking story.
Vegans, parents killing their children. I could talk about very
That, like, again, you're talking about, like, I could have brought up things that didn't really directly relate to the topic. Okay. Um, your point?
apparent negative things about him and his past problems. Vegan. I could have talked about a
So he's basically, like, almost threatening to, like, try to slander me? Like, okay, Frank, that's great. You can talk about how I said I wanted to kill children on camera. What the fuck does that have to do with the debate topic? Like, it's retarded.
million negative things about veganism. And I could have also brought up another million topics about how meat consumption is lower now, but heart disease is higher.
Meat consumption isn't lower. It's steadily been increasing over the past few decades. Let's see. You can just quickly look at a graph. I don't know where this was sourced from, but I mean, pretty much every metric you can find. This is the USDA meat consumption. It's only just recently started to go down around the mid-2000s. And I'm assuming that has something to do with, like, veganism and vegetarian becoming a little more popular. This is another U.S. Department of Agriculture statistic. Red meat consumption has gone down. Poultry has gone up overall, massively. But total meat consumption, it's steadily increased, and it only just started to go down again around the mid-2000s. So I don't know what the fuck he's talking about here. Also, I've talked about this many times, but even if meat consumption goes down, chances are heart disease rates will stay pretty much the same, just because of the effect of, like, baseline dietary cholesterol and added dietary cholesterol. I've discussed this a lot, but you know, this meta-analysis goes very in depth in this topic, but just because you lower your intake of cholesterol, that doesn't mean your serum cholesterol will go down to any appreciable extent. Like, you have to cut it down to zero, pretty much. So until we pretty much just flat out stop consuming animal products, heart disease rates will stay pretty much the same.
You know, I did try to bring up things like, oh, well, the lipid hypothesis is based off of rabbits, and
No, actually. The lipid hypothesis wasn't based off of animal experiments. The lipid hypothesis was actually created in the 70s after the term was well defined, and the first experiments showing that dietary cholesterol and saturated fat causes heart disease were animal experiments conducted on rabbits. But Frank, like, that's 100 years ago. You don't think we've had research on humans in the past 100 fucking years? So he keeps fucking strawmanning this entire topic. He's like, oh, like, whenever I fucking give him evidence, like, no, Frank, here's the evidence, take a look at it. People who have high cholesterol levels have more atherosclerosis. And he's like, this is based on rabbit studies. It's like, no, Frank, this is human research. It's just retarded.
and just other BS that he just threw out the window. And even the nutrient density thing, guys, I can't even get carnivores to consume a nutrient-dense diet. You think I could argue that against vegans? Please.
Again, Frank, there was a recent study that came out of Switzerland. I think it was 2015 or 2016. The only nutrient that vegans did have a higher rate of deficiency in was zinc, and that's it. Everything else, the same. Now, there are certain fat-soluble vitamins, like vitamin A, where the vitamin A status was lower, but that's actually a good thing because they're not consuming a toxic amount of vitamin A. Whereas a lot of meat eaters, they tend to consume too much vitamin A in the form of fully formed vitamin A, and that's toxic. It can cause liver damage. Chronic toxicity can lead to bone abnormalities. So vegans don't have a higher rate of deficiency in anything aside from zinc right now. That's what the most recent data shows. And that's very easily fixed. Eat more hemp seeds. You can eat hemp protein powder. You can even take like a supplement if need be. But these things are, it's not difficult to eat a nutritionally complete vegan diet. And you keep making this claim, but you have no evidence for your claims.
All of these things I've thought about. And for those of you guys saying my debate skills are lacking, let me show you this information.
Your debate skills are massively lacking. It was so fucking difficult to get an answer from you on anything. I kept asking you like very simple, straightforward questions like, do you believe saturated fat and cholesterol does not cause heart disease? And you would never give me a straight, like, yes or no fucking answer. You kept fucking dancing around every fucking topic. This isn't even, this does have to do with you being ill-prepared and being a fucking moron and just literally not understanding what I'm saying, but you're also just completely dishonest when you're just answering simple fucking straightforward questions. So yeah, your debate skills are severely lacking, and it's not just because you're ignorant on the topic, it's just because you're just genuinely fucking dishonest.
So this was the tweet discussing our debate, and before...
Okay, so notice how Frank here, he skipped. Like, he basically skipped this portion in the Twitter DM. We'll take a look at that in just a second. You know what? I think I'll add another monitor capture. I think I can I? Yeah. I'll add another monitor capture here, and then I can just switch back and forth between these a little easier. Whoops. Video capture, display capture 2. Oh, no, I fucked up. Okay, here we go. I'll move this. I'm just trying to... Nope. Okay, that'll be good. Okay, so I'll show you how the conversation actually started off. So Frank sent me an email, by the way, on my business account saying that he wanted to debate. Then I just messaged him here saying, I heard you wanted to have a debate. Wednesday or later this week works for me. Then he said Wednesday morning around noon. I don't think I'm free until Monday. Then he says, I don't know about a debate necessarily. We probably agree on more things than not, i.e. Sverige being a nut job. Then I told him I want to debate or I'm not interested. There's a hell of a lot we disagree on. And then he said, we could do a debate, but I don't really know how far in I would be willing to refute each point. Like, I'm not going to get into an argument. I'll present my ideas and my side. Also, you don't have Sverige's contact email, do you? Then I said, no, I don't. So we could do Wednesday or any other day this week except the weekend. Wednesday's okay, earlier is better. Then I said, don't be a pussy. If you're not interested in having a debate, then I'm not interested in having you on my channel, and a debate would involve arguing. Then he said, most people would interpret it as an argument. I just consider it an argument, something that doesn't have a base to it. That's why you're calling it a debate. Like, I don't even know what the fuck he's talking about here. The science stuff about nutrients might be a debate, but the moral or ethical, if we get into it, would be more of an argument, I guess. So this guy doesn't even understand what a fucking debate or argument is. Then I just made a joke about how he doesn't understand what a fucking argument is, and I said I'd be interested in debating the health consequences of a carnivore diet, including heart disease, diabetes, and cancer, and I'd like to debate the ethical principles of veganism. If you're interested in having a debate on those topics, then I'm interested. If not, then I'm not going to waste my time. Then he said, there's no reasonable links to a carnivore diet and diabetes or cancer or heart disease, so I don't know what to tell you. It's like... So this guy's admitting he just doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about, and he's worried about having a debate because he can't provide any evidence. Then he said, I want to debate the bioavailability of fat-soluble vitamins, and it's like... And then I just told him, it's a yes or no question. Do you want to debate these topics or not? And then he said, what with those other things as well, so only those topics? And I said, bioavailability of certain nutrients would tie into the topic, so do you want to debate those topics or not? And they said, yeah, sounds pretty close to what I had in mind. Then we just set up the time. Here's the Google Hangout link I sent him. Oh, actually, there might be a... let's see. No. Okay, no. I can't look at the old chat log. Okay, so that's basically what happened. Let me readjust this shit here. Yeah, so that's basically what happened, and then Frank tried to spin it in an entirely different way.
He said, don't be a pussy. If you're not interested in having a debate, then I'm not interested. And I wanted to have more of a discussion on various topics, and he didn't agree to the topics I wanted to initially discuss on. So what he said then was...
You didn't actually suggest any debate topics other than fat-soluble vitamins and crap. That's it. Like, again, if you actually take a look at the DMs, you didn't really suggest any other topic other than, vegan vitamin deficiencies. And then I said, like, no, like, we have to have a debate. I'm not interested in just having a discussion with someone like you. And you agreed. Like, ultimately you said, okay, yeah, sure, let's do it. So, like, this is my fault that you were ill-prepared for a fucking debate? It's just retarded. Are you going to respond to Frank's new bullshit? I definitely am. I'm going to respond to this video anyway.
Most people are afraid to be...
What new videos has he done? Raw primal recipes, lamb brain tartare. Okay, this guy is absolutely retarded. Anyone who eats brains is just beyond stupid.
I'd be interested in debating the health consequences of a carnivore diet, including heart disease, diabetes, and cancer, and I'd like to debate the ethical principles of veganism. So let's throw out ethical principles of veganism because that's not really relevant to what I'm upset about.
Okay.
He said, I'd be interested in debating the health consequences of a carnivore diet, including heart disease, diabetes, and cancer. So what I did was I looked up things in relation to the carnivore diet and heart disease. You know, why would meat...
You literally had no research prepared whatsoever. You didn't even understand what fucking atherosclerosis is. I kept asking you, do you believe saturated fat and cholesterol, do you believe these nutrients cause atherosclerosis? And it was clear in the debate that you didn't know what the fuck that even means. So you didn't prepare at all.
Meat cause heart disease? Why would meat cause diabetes? And why would meat cause cancer? And we didn't discuss any of that.
Yeah, we did. Like, I at least tried to discuss with you whether saturated fat and cholesterol cause heart disease. You just kept... You'd never answer my fucking questions. I'd ask you very simple yes or no questions, and you just wouldn't fucking answer. But I ended up providing evidence to you that saturated fat and cholesterol does, in fact, raise serum cholesterol, which is the main risk factor for fucking heart disease. And what else? We did discuss heme iron and its relationship with heart disease, diabetes, cancer. We did discuss saturated fat intake and its effect on diabetes. So we did discuss these topics, Frank. You're just being a lying, manipulative idiot.
He might try to argue that, oh, well, heme iron, the studies that he linked to me with heme iron was with
fucking rabbits.
Diabetes and cancer. But no, his main argument was that heme iron caused oxidation, which is nothing of what we spoke about. And I'm very well versed in.
What? Like... It's almost as if he's having a conversation with someone in his own head. I think he might actually be mentally ill, sort of like Elliot Rogers. He kind of talks like, you know, oh, I'm being a supreme gentleman, you know?
in heme iron and its inflammatory properties in regards to nitrosamines, but he didn't tell me about that at all. And the first one about heart disease.
What are you talking about? Heme iron is a pro-oxidant, and I gave you evidence showing that the pro-oxidant properties of heme iron increase risk of heart disease, diabetes, and cancer.
Is the atherosclerosis in these mummies technically a topic about heart disease? Well, heart disease isn't related to the carnivore diet. These people were not on a carnivore diet.
Okay, Frank, your claim was that pre-agricultural hunter-gatherer populations who ate animal-based diets like the Maasai, you claimed that they never developed heart disease. I gave you evidence disproving that notion. I gave you the Horus study, which found that even among pre-agricultural hunter-gatherers, they still developed atherosclerosis. Every society all throughout human history, if you can find mummified remains, they had atherosclerosis. So your claim that, these ancient societies that didn't practice agriculture, they never developed heart disease, well, yes, they fucking did. And you tried to debunk that claim after I provided research. You did a quick Google search, and you found a study on the Maasai, and you literally read it out at, you never even saw the study before, and you read it out live, and the study, plainly stated that atherosclerosis has a very high prevalence among the Maasai. So pretty much all of them have heart disease. So I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Your own research that you presented in that debate showed that the Maasai had high prevalence of heart disease. And this is a population that you said rarely, if ever, develop heart disease. So, you're just insane. Now, I had a discussion later on with Frank on Twitter, which kind of makes some of this make a lot more sense in context. He doesn't actually understand what atherosclerosis is, and he kind of separates atherosclerosis in a, the definition in a weird way. So you can have atherosclerosis, but the disease might not reach clinical significance where it'll actually obstruct enough of your blood flow where it will cause angina, chest pains, or an eventual heart attack or stroke. So you can have atherosclerosis, but it might not be dangerous or clinically significant. So what Frank does is he separates atherosclerosis, the earlier, less clinically significant stages, and he says that's not atherosclerosis, that's just a normal physiological occurrence in a human body. And then he calls atherosclerosis the clinically significant stage. So he doesn't actually know what atherosclerosis is, and he defines atherosclerosis as blockages in your arteries that become clinically significant. That's not what atherosclerosis actually is, and we had a huge long discussion on Twitter about what atherosclerosis is and whether it's a normal physiological effect of, aging. But we'll look at that. We'll look at that in a little bit.
People in that mummy study were on a diet of fish, vegetables, and grains.
No. Again, that Horus study didn't even talk about their fucking diet at all. These were mummified remains. The researchers don't actually know exactly what these people were eating, but, given that we do know about these cultures somewhat, like the Egyptian mummies they found, okay, well, they're probably eating wheat, some livestock animals, but mostly, fish from the Nile. And the pre-agricultural hunter-gatherers in Africa, they're likely just eating a lot of wild-caught game. Smaller animals, maybe some local herbs or, whatever kind of plants they could get seasonally. But, no, Frank, again, you're straw-manning the fucking research I referenced. There were 4 or 5 different cultures that they that they referenced in the horror study, and 2 of them were pre-agricultural hunter-gatherer populations that weren't eating grains. Again, they were pre-agriculture, and they still developed atherosclerosis. And, like, Frank, if you're going to claim that grains cause atherosclerosis, then where's the evidence for that? There's every indication that consumption of whole grains prevents heart disease. So it's just more retarded horseshit.
So, regardless of what Vegan Gains tries to justify in telling me these topics and tries to loosely connect them with what he said, I think anyone who interprets what he said here is not what we debated about. This is why I am so upset. You know, some people think I look stupid in this debate. Some people are...
Like, Frank, we started off the discussion with heart disease. You claimed that pre-agricultural hunter-gatherer populations did not develop heart disease, and I debunked that notion with the horror study. So it was totally relevant to the topic, you just whining and crying about how you weren't prepared to deal with my response. That's not me being dishonest, that's just you being ill-prepared.
Or insulting my intelligence, but I still think I conveyed myself. And the reason I was saying I don't want to discuss these topics, I'd like to move on, is because I didn't have research on this, because he's literally...
Because you're a fucking moron and you don't know anything of about what you're talking about. I'm not surprised that you weren't aware that atherosclerosis occurs in every human population everywhere throughout history. Like Frank, if you're wrong about something, it's okay to say, oh, I was mistaken. I guess atherosclerosis did occur in pre-agricultural hunter-gatherer societies. I'm going to have to change my outlook on a few things now. Like, that would be the honest thing to do, but instead you're trying to basically project and accuse me of being dishonest.
Linking me studies in and under the stress of the live stream that was very difficult to study. It took me 8 minutes in my debunk video. Guys, I debunked everything in 8 minutes over this 3.5-hour podcast. The video I did last night. Like, without the...
Oh yeah, we've got to watch his stupid
Most people are afraid
debunking video. That was pure sophistry. So we'll watch that one
stress
afterwards.
of the live stream and the ability to just read the full study, which he refused to give me. He refused to give me the full study. He said he...
What are you talking about? I didn't refuse to give you a full text. The full text just wasn't available. Again, another fucking lie from Frank. I gave you the fucking link to the horror study. There might be a way to rent it or pay for it, but like I know there are some places where you can get what is it? I forget now. Like ResearchGate, they tend to be pretty good with giving full free texts, but yeah, like the full text just wasn't available to me. That's why I didn't give you a full fucking text. It's not because I refused. No, it just wasn't available, so you're lying.
Heme iron causes oxidation when it's not heme iron. Iron sulfide causes oxidation.
No, heme iron causes oxidation. We'll actually go back and watch his little retarded
and he
video.
said calcification is in these mummies when the...
I didn't say calcification was in these mummies. I said atherosclerosis was present in these mummies. You don't need calcification for atherosclerosis to occur.
CT scans are invalid measures for atherosclerosis. There's just...
How are CT scans invalid measures for atherosclerosis? How the fuck else are you going to measure atherosclerosis? So if you go to a fucking doctor's office right now and you get some sort of CT or MRI on your fucking chest and they see that there's either calcification or like fatty buildup in your fucking arteries, oh, that's not valid evidence. They have to like literally cut you open up your oh yeah, there's atherosclerosis there. No, like Frank, we have modern technology. These imaging technologies are reliable, and what they found was atherosclerosis was present in these fucking mummies. You can't just say it was a fucking magnetic scan. That doesn't count. Like what?
so much lying and misleading that he did to me that I feel like he needs to set this right. Let's just say Frankie the Face might get some sort of craving for some tiny animals over the next few days if Vegan Gains doesn't respond to the...
So he's threatening to harm small animals if I don't respond to him.
this video sooner than later. Just of the utmost importance, as I feel, the way he misled me to tarnish my reputation and intelligence is very personal. And the banter...
You're just fucking stupid, Frank. Like, I didn't even need to do anything. I just let you talk and you made yourself look fucking stupid.
Between me and Goji Man and that type of stuff is drastically different than misleading someone into a debate and setting them up for...
I didn't mislead. I was very clear what the debate topics would be. You made claims that you couldn't support with evidence, and when I proved you wrong, that's not me being dishonest, that's just you being ill-prepared.
Failure, which is essentially what he did, in my eyes. Guys, let me know if I sound crazy here, but either way...
He's literally... he's literally claiming that he's going to harm animals if I don't respond to him and apologize. This guy's insane.
I really, I've thought about this a lot over the past, well, as long as, I know it's only been a day, but, I've thought about this fairly in depth, and from my perspective, this was obviously a setup. This was not fair to me. This was not, something I should have done if I knew this was going to happen. And there needs to be a consequence for him, but how can I hurt him? I have, how many people watch my videos compared to his? What can I do? Can I say that I'm going to start, doing negative things that would go against his morals because of him and what he did to me? Should I start doing things like that? How crazy would that be? That seems like almost as crazy as him.
What is he even fucking talking about? So, this guy should probably be on an FBI list. Let's look at his first response video now, where he actually tried to debunk some of the research I referenced in the debate. This was fucking hilarious.
Vegan Gain's a liar. Did he set me up for failure? Did he mislead me? Kind of. But I don't really have any regrets about the live stream. I just regret...
Review of iron and its importance for human health. I never linked the study.
Not doing a makeup check, because the only comments on that video are... oh, he's wearing makeup. So we'll do one at the end of this video for you guys. But, this whole premise of this I was very upset with, because we only really argued 2 points, and I wasn't prepared because he didn't link me these studies ahead of time. And it literally took me about 10 minutes of research on my own time to debunk these, which, under the stress of the live stream and him talking to me, I wasn't able to find this information too easily. I wasn't able to find it at all at the time. So the first point we really argued back and forth on for about an hour was atherosclerosis and heart disease in ancient populations. It was pretty much this study done on 4 groups of people on the mummies that said, okay, they had atherosclerosis, and Vegan Gains used it as a blanket statement to say, oh, all indigenous groups, all hunter-gatherers have atherosclerosis, which is completely crazy blanket statement. And he said, oh, the diets of these people didn't matter, and he didn't know what they were, and I found...
Well... no, again, Frank, you're trying to claim that pre-agricultural hunter-gatherers never developed atherosclerosis. Then when I proved that they, in fact, did, you said, oh, well, what were they eating? Well, no, the claim you made was that pre-agricultural hunter-gatherers never developed atherosclerosis. So, what they ate was irrelevant. They were pre-agricultural hunter-gatherer populations, and they developed atherosclerosis.
On this, they followed a diet rich in vegetables and seafood, free from saturated...
Okay, let's see. First, the percentages of diagnosed atherosclerosis: 38% of Egyptians, 25% of ancient Peruvians, 40% of ancestral Pablones, and 60% of Onangan hunter-gatherers seem too high for pre-industrial communities, especially for hunter-gatherers who did not show evidence of atherosclerosis in previous studies. These civilizations did intense physical activity and followed a diet rich in vegetables and seafood, free from saturated fats, and therefore with low risk of developing atherosclerosis. This is a little inaccurate. So here's the thing. When these people are studying these populations, they're anthropologists, they're not cardiac pathologists, they're not nutrition experts, so, when hunter-gatherers from Africa, they're eating a lot of fucking, like, what, wild boar, like, what are they called? Antelope, like, just, you know, wild-caught game. That's not low in saturated fat or cholesterol. Now, there's a lot of different areas in Africa. Maybe they're eating a lot of vegetation, but I'm not sure. It depends. Like the Maasai, for instance, it's seasonal, but you know, during drier seasons, they don't eat that much fruit. Their main source of calories is like dairy, essentially. Let's take a look at this. So this is The Lancet. They were talking about... So I think this is in response to the horror study I mentioned. Atherosclerosis. Okay, this is Cordain. So let's take a look at this again. I'm just hoping you guys can see this properly. Okay, so so they're basically saying these statistics seem to be too high for pre-industrial communities, especially for hunter-gatherers who did not show evidence of atherosclerosis in previous studies. So they actually linked a study by Lauren Cordain, one of the most biased, retarded hypocrites on ancient hunter-gatherer populations. And this is referencing modern-day research where they didn't actually provide good evidence that these people did not have cardiovascular disease. Lauren Cordain, let's see. Field studies of 20th century hunter-gatherers showed them to be generally free of signs and symptoms of cardiovascular disease. Okay, so they didn't actually do... like, angiograms on their fucking coronary arteries. They just figured, oh, look, it doesn't look like they have high rates of CVD. The high reliance upon animal-based foods would not have necessarily elicited unfavorable blood lipid profiles because of the hypolipidemic effects of high dietary protein and the relatively low level of dietary carbohydrate, 22 to 40% of energy. That's not exactly low. Although fat intake, 28 to 58% of energy would have been similar to or higher than that found in Western diets. Okay, so basically this isn't evidence. There's literally no evidence here that these people had low rates of cardiovascular disease, like atherosclerosis. So they're linking horseshit data here. Who wrote this? Gino Fornaciario. I'm just wondering who the fuck this person is because it's complete nonsense. Division of Paleontology. Okay, yeah, so let's see. Department of Translation Research on New Technologies in Medicine and Surgery. This person... Okay, so it doesn't sound like this person knows much about cardiac pathology. They seem like paleontologists, and they're trying to make claims about cardiac pathology. So that's the issue here. It's just, these people know a lot about one specific topic, which is paleontology, anthropology, things like that, but they're trying to talk about cardiac pathology, and then they're just linking bad research that they don't understand. So, like, this claim here is just nonsense. This claim here is just nonsense. There's no good evidence that these hunter-gatherer populations don't have a high prevalence of heart disease. Second, atherosclerosis diagnosed as probable or definite in 13 mummies with mean age at death between 18 to 35 years seems too high for young individuals. Well, no. There was the study I referenced quite a bit on GIs killed in the Korean War. Some of those men were as young as 16 years of age, and they had gross evidence of atherosclerosis. So no, atherosclerosis occurs even in young individuals. It's just that the disease hasn't developed enough to achieve clinical significance. It's sort of like plumbing. You need a very significant portion of the cross-sectional area blocked off until significant blood flow is reduced in your arteries. I think it's 70% of the cross-sectional area. So it's just that, you know, you can have gross evidence of atherosclerosis. It's just that you need about 70% of the cross-sectional area to be blocked off until blood flow is actually significantly impeded. Let's see. Third, regarding smoke, a major risk factor, Thompson and colleagues correctly noted that cigarette smoking was not part of these populations, but then they suggested that fire smoke inhalation could have played a part in the development of atherosclerosis. However, the risk of atherosclerosis increases as a result of nicotine intake and not the smoke of a bonfire. Components of tobacco smoke include changes in the function of thrombocytes, endothelium, macrophages, and smooth muscle cells and vessels. Okay, so I think they're trying to suggest here that, oh, maybe the reason they found such a high rate of atherosclerosis among these relatively young specimens, it has more to do with, like, other lifestyle factors, like inhaling smoke, than it does their diet. Again, the people who wrote this article, they don't really know what they're talking about, like, about cardiac pathology. They're paleontologists. Atherosclerosis is incredibly common. You can even find evidence of atherosclerosis in babies before they're even fucking born because the mothers consume enough cholesterol and saturated fat to cause the very, very early development of atherosclerosis. So no. Atherosclerosis occurs in extremely young individuals, even those who are physically fit and don't smoke. It's just that you need about 70% of the cross-sectional area to be blocked off before it reaches clinical significance. Furthermore, stating that atherosclerosis is not characteristic of any specific diet or lifestyle, but an inherent component of human aging, is not in agreement with recent studies demonstrating the importance of diet and physical activity. So they're just stating here that, okay, this isn't likely just a normal physiological occurrence in a human. It's likely because of diet and other confounding lifestyle factors. If atherosclerosis only depended on aging, it would not have been possible to diagnose in a young individual, as done in the horror study. So again, showing that, okay, it must have been diet and other lifestyle factors here that cause these mummies to have atherosclerosis. Finally, classification of probable atherosclerosis on the basis of the presence of a calcification in the expected course of an artery seems incorrect because the anatomy can be strongly altered by post-mortem events. The walls of the vessels might collapse, dehydrate, and have the appearance of calcific thickening. For this reason, the X-ray CT pattern alone is insufficient, and diagnosis should be supported by histological study. I'm not familiar with that word, histological. Oh, okay, so basically they're trying to say they should have tissue specimens that they actually look under a microscope to confirm the findings of arterial plaque or calcification rather than just relying on the CT X-ray. But the horror study I still linked still stands. They found gross evidence of atherosclerosis in all of these mummies. It would be better if they could confirm it with a histological exam where they actually take tissue samples and confirm the presence of plaque or calcification in their arteries. But the CT is still pretty accurate. Thoughts on the KSI versus the Logan Paul fight? I think Logan Paul should really work on his fucking cardio the next time they fight. He gassed out really quickly. If he could keep that that strength and speed and level of control in the fight that he had in the first round or two, he would have dominated KSI. So I hope he really works on his cardio for the next match.
Saturated fats, therefore with low risk of developing atherosclerosis. And they were intensely physically active, so by all standards, why did they have atherosclerosis? Well,
so Frank doesn't actually understand what he's reading here. Again, the paleontologists who wrote this article, they don't know anything about cardiac pathology. These people were eating diets that were high enough in saturated fat and cholesterol where it caused the progression of atherosclerosis, and they also aren't aware that literally everyone has atherosclerosis. It's very fucking rare that you'd find any human being on the planet that doesn't have some amount of atherosclerosis, just because we all eat animal products. So again, Frank is just misreading this paper here, and the people who even wrote this article, they don't really know what they're talking about.
Well, they didn't, because the anatomy can be strongly altered by post-mortem events. The walls of the vessel might collapse, dehydrate, and have the appearance of calcific thickening. For this reason, the X-ray CT pattern alone is insufficient, and diagnosis should be supported by histological study, which is like dissecting it, which they didn't do. So,
again, Frank, the best evidence we have is the horror study, and it's quite clear that atherosclerosis did occur in these mummies. I don't think that that the gross evidence they found of atherosclerosis in these mummified remains, it's all just a coincidence, and they all just misinterpreted the CT scan, and it was just, dehydration and wall collapse and shit like that. No. Again, I'd ask you to provide evidence for this claim that all of the evidence of atherosclerosis they found was false. Do you have any histological research showing that in these mummies, the histological findings found that they did not have atherosclerosis in their arteries?
basically that study is dog shit, as I said it was, and that's why I made the joke. Let's take a plane over to Egypt and go look at some mummies. I thought it was completely ridiculous, but apparently no one else did. And I also linked a study.
Yeah, like, Frank, if you're going to claim that the horror study is bogus, then where's the histological research showing that these mummified remains didn't have atherosclerosis?
Showing it is speculated that the Messiah are protected from their atherosclerosis by physical fitness, which causes their coronary vessels to be capacious. And that was the study I linked, but I also found...
Okay, so he linked this study, but again, it found that the Messiah have extremely high rates of atherosclerosis. It's just that for whatever reason, the authors sort of suspect it's because of their physical fitness, which makes their coronary vessels a little wider, that the disease doesn't reach clinical significance. Again, you need about 70% of the cross-sectional area to be blocked off until you end up actually severely impacting blood flow. So Frank tends to misrepresent and misunderstand a lot of the research he links. He was trying to claim that heart disease just doesn't occur in these hunter-gatherer populations. Well, clearly they do. It's just that this study found that their physical fitness kind of compensates for, you know, the damage to their fucking actual arteries.
Knowing it is speculated that the Messiah are protected from their atherosclerosis by physical fitness, which causes their coronary vessels to be capacious. And that was the study I linked, but I also found two more studies on this research. Low levels of serum cholesterol and no evidence of arteriosclerotic heart disease in the Messiah. And
okay, I'd want to back up there for a second. So, cardiovascular disease in the Messiah. Let's see if we can actually find that paper. Okay, this is the same paper. I'll zoom in here. So, a field survey of 400 Maasai men and additional women and children indicates little or no clinical or chemical evidence of atherosclerosis. So I'm guessing they didn't do a CT or angiogram to actually take a look at their coronary arteries. Again, what they just did was conducted simple blood tests. So this just isn't good. This just isn't good research. What is it? Despite a long continued diet of exclusively meat and milk, that's kind of a misrepresentation of their diet and even lifestyle. Again, their diets are seasonal, and they do consume a lot of like local herbs. They're very good at using local herbs as medicines, and there is evidence that some of these things they eat for medicinal purposes does lower cholesterol. They also have extremely high rates of infectious disease and parasitic infection, which also lowers their fucking cholesterol levels. And they eat extremely low-calorie diets. I think on average they're consuming like 16 or 1700 calories per day. So very, very low-calorie diets. This all contributes to them having low serum cholesterol scores proportionate to the amount of animal products they're consuming, but they're just eating such a low-calorie diet. They have a high level of physical activity. They're infected with parasites and infectious diseases that lower their cholesterol even further, and they use medicinal herbs, and that might also lower their cholesterol even further. And that's why you don't see a very high rate of death from heart disease among this population. But even still, they're eating a lot of animal products, and they still have high prevalence of atherosclerosis. It's just that it doesn't reach clinical significance. And again, they didn't conduct like angiograms on their coronary arteries to see, they didn't even do an intima media thickness test to see the health of their actual arteries. It just sounds like they did a simple blood test. The authors concede that some overriding protective mechanisms, such as freedom from emotional stress or abundance of physical exercise, may be present. They favor the conclusion that diet fat is not responsible for coronary disease. Okay, well, again, these people don't really know what they're talking about. Again, it's not a good idea to rely on data of these tribes people. They're very small populations that are spread out across a very large area. Their diets and lifestyles are massively fucking different than our own. Just because you don't see a very strong link between their diet and heart disease, that doesn't really mean as much as you might think. It just means their overall lifestyle is different enough from yours that despite eating a terrible diet, you might not actually see very high rates of death from heart disease. So again, how many, if you're going to talk about the Maasai, well, how many people in Western civilization are eating 16 to 1700 calories per day, like the Maasai? How many people in modern Western civilization are infected with parasites and malaria, like the Maasai? So this is just bad research. Okay, let's just go on.
And another study showing that they are nearly free from atherosclerosis eating nothing but milk.
Another study? Wait, what is this? Oh, did he link all this down below? That might be helpful. Let me just close a few tabs, so, what's that one? Okay, let me just close a few tabs. I'll open these up. Atherosclerosis in Maasai. Okay, the intake of animal fat exceeds that of most American men. Measurements of the aorta showed extensive atherosclerosis. So, yeah, this is from 1972, and they had gross evidence of atherosclerosis. With lipid infiltration, so their cholesterol was infiltrating their arterial walls, and they had fibrous changes, but very few complicated lesions. So very few lesions that really protruded and obstructed blood flow. But atherosclerosis was very prevalent. The coronary artery showed intimal thickening by atherosclerosis, which equaled that of older U.S. men. So, again, basically, their arteries don't seem any better than a typical American male. The Maasai vessels enlarge with age to more than compensate for the disease. It's speculated that the Maasai are protected through their physical fitness, which causes their coronary vessels to be capacious. So they don't really know why their coronary vessels are growing. But again, their diet and lifestyle is completely different from our own. I mentioned before that they do eat a lot of medicinal herbs to deal with disease. That might be an impact on just their use of the natural native wildlife there, the plants, the flora and fauna they have access to. So again, why would you eat a diet that causes atherosclerosis clearly, and then just like try to take a gamble on the idea that, oh, well, maybe if I exercise a lot, my arteries will kind of grow with age, and that'll compensate for the disease? It's fucking stupid. Let's see, cardiovascular disease in the Maasai. We just went over that one. And Maasai and atherosclerosis. Let's see. Okay, this isn't even a study. Yeah, this isn't even an actual study. Okay, so the first study, this is just an article where this guy is interpreting some of the research. At approximately 14 years old, the Maasai men are inducted into the warrior class, something. Milk is about 50%. Okay, wait. Now here he's talking about the diet. Milk fat is about 50% saturated. That means the Moran get 33% of his calories from saturated fat. This population eats more saturated fat than any other I'm aware of. How's their cholesterol? Remarkably low. Their serum cholesterol is about half the average Americans. What's the actual cholesterol score? I'd like to actually know what their score is. I haven't found any studies that broke it down further than total cholesterol. Their blood... Well, what is their actual cholesterol score? So, again, this is just a bad article he's referencing. Let's see. Autopsied 50 Maasai men aged 10 to 65. The single most represented age group was 50 to 59 years old. At 13 in... yeah. Okay, so there was 50 to 59 autopsied corpses. Sorry, there was 13 autopsied corpses, and the most represented age group was 50 to 59. So basically, men in their 50s, it was most common to find these individuals, like, dead, I guess. They found no evidence of myocardial infarction, heart attack in any of the 50 hearts, what? Oh, okay, so there were 50 total men who died. The most represented age group was 50 to 59. What they did find, however, was coronary artery disease. So these people didn't die of a heart attack, but they did have gross evidence of coronary artery disease. And you can actually see, here's a figure showing the prevalence of aortic fibrosis, a type of atherosclerotic lesion. So very common among men 40 and over. You can even see it in men in their, in their teens and 30s. It looks almost binary, doesn't it? What could be causing the dramatic jump in atherosclerosis at age 40? Here's another figure of total cholesterol. And pseudenophilia, fatty streaks in the arteries. Note that Moran period is superimposed at the top. Okay, so this is actually a figure they show. Is this actually a figure they show of their cholesterol and the clogging of their arteries? Okay, so total cholesterol, milligram percentage? What? This is just a very strange chart. I don't know how to actually read this. Masai cholesteremia, sudanophilia. Okay, so they're comparing atherosclerotic lesion to cholesterol score. The cholesterol data for 1962 are described in reference 6, and in subsequent unpublished studies, all subjects in the BOMA were measured. Number of subjects is shown for each mean value. So it looks like they found an association between cholesterol score and basically worsening of atherosclerosis. We believe the Moran escaped some noxious dietary agent for a time. Obviously, this is neither animal fat nor cholesterol. The old and young Maasai do not have access to such processed staples such as flour, sugar, confections, and shortening through the Indian dukkha scattered Maasai land. These foods could carry the hypothetical agent. This may suggest that you can eat a wide variety of foods and be healthy, except industrial grain products, sugar, blah, blah, blah. Okay. What? What? Hey.
What time?
Huh?
So what time are you gonna stream?
Oh, just another hour, basically.
Okay. You need water?
Yeah, please. I don't actually understand fully how to interpret this chart. It looks like as cholesterol goes up, it looks like they have worsening of arterial plaque. So I don't know how they came to this conclusion here. And you can also see gross evidence of atherosclerosis in pretty much every age group. It's just that the plaques become worse with age. Thank you. Okay, so that's all of the Maasai bullcrap that Frank referenced. If you are responding to Frank, make sure you include skits where you use fake bushy eyelashes and lip gloss to portray him. Yeah, I should actually.
Atherosclerosis eating nothing but milk, meat, and blood. So 2 more studies to prove that point. Now,
Wait a second.
Atherosclerosis, no evidence of arteriosclerotic heart disease.
No, they did find gross evidence of heart disease. That's total
In the
horseshit.
Maasai, and another study showing that they are nearly free from atherosclerosis.
They didn't say they're nearly free from atherosclerosis. They had very high rates of atherosclerosis. Okay, so I'm getting this now. They're claiming, they're trying to claim that there's a wide gap in between these age groups where there doesn't seem to be much in between. They either have really bad atherosclerosis or not so bad. What that suggests to me is it has something to do with parasitic infection and infectious disease. I think the people who struggle more with infectious disease, they actually end up having lower cholesterol scores and, as a result, lower risk of heart disease. Whereas people who avoid infectious disease, they probably end up living a bit longer, maybe. But their heart disease actually becomes much worse. So I think that's what's actually going on here. That's why you see this huge dichotomy where, you know, there's people who have not so bad heart disease, but they eat really high amounts of saturated fat, and there's no like middle ground. And then there's some people who eat the same diet, but it's really bad. I think that's what's actually going on here. Again, none of these people really take into account the diseases these tribes people really have to deal with. So, I'm just not understanding how this guy is interpreting these findings. These people are claiming they have very high rates of heart disease. It's just that they have lower prevalence of, they have lower rates of actual death from heart disease.
Eating nothing but milk, meat, and blood. So 2 more studies to prove that point. Now, before we go into the second discussion, which was how heme iron, his idea was that heme iron caused oxidation of LDL, and we touched on the N-nitroso compound thing, which he knew way less about that than me. He could.
What are you talking about? I've talked about N-nitroso compounds in a lot of my videos and how they're linked to cancer. Processed red meats, they have more N-nitroso compounds, but heme iron itself catalyzes the production of N-nitroso compounds. So, although processed red meat is worse, you're not totally avoiding these carcinogens just by eating fresh red meat.
Couldn't bring up the heme iron debate in regards to nitrates and stuff because I would have smoked him on that, and I kind of did. Like
I don't even know what he's talking about here. He did bring up N-nitroso compounds in processed meat, and I said, and I told him, yeah, I realize processed red meat is worse, but you're still not avoiding these carcinogens by eating fresh red meat.
I shouldn't have said it early on that I knew what that was and explained it so easily early on, so I kind of maybe, the one thing I had on him, I kind of threw out the window early on, but...
I don't even know what the fuck he's talking about. Like, it's... Nothing he says makes any fucking sense.
Before we go into these other studies, we have to understand junk science, and Dr. Darren Schmidt did a great video on...
He's not a doctor, he's a chiropractor. This guy is a complete retard. Dr. Darren Schmidt, not a doctor. Yeah, let's look up his channel.
Hi, Minnie.
This guy is a moron. 20 years of healthcare the way Mother Nature intended. Yeah, if you just go to his website, he's a chiropractor. Yeah, it says Dr. Darren Schmidt, DC, which is chiropractor. This guy is an absolute fraud, and he's just a dumbass. You can just... Let's just click on a video of his. He seems slow. Really fucking slow.
Hey, it's Dr. Darren Schmidt at the Nutritional Healing Center of Ann Arbor. And it's been 2.5 years now since I figured out that lactic acidosis is the mechanism of chronic disease. Here's a playlist about it.
So this guy just seems like he has mild Down syndrome. He even criticized
Hi, it's
Dr. Michael
Schmidt at
Greger.
the Nutritional Healing Center of Ann Arbor. And this video is about a video that I found with the best and most educated vegans on the internet. It's a compilation of their biggest points, their biggest takeaways, and I'm gonna go through the first probably 8 minutes or so, and we're gonna go.
Let's look at some of the links. So the graph showing LDL's poor relationship with cardiovascular disease. Let's see this. Oh my god! He actually linked this. Okay, so, I've seen this shit before. So he linked this graph where, they found that patients hospitalized with heart disease, more than 75% had normal cholesterol levels below 130 milligrams per deciliter. Okay, well, 130 is too high, so this is LDL-C. Ideally, you want below 70 milligrams per deciliter. So, yeah, most people had cholesterol levels that are too high. So this doesn't actually prove anything. Also, what you have to understand, too, is when you get sick, your cholesterol levels can fall a bit, so that's why you see some people with low cholesterol levels here. And also, a lot of these people, you know, they have heart disease, so they're going to be given statins or cholesterol-lowering drugs. Now, cholesterol-lowering drugs do reduce risk of recurrent cardiac events, but they're not perfect. So you like a lot of these really low numbers here, you like you'd expect, like, okay, if you have a cholesterol score of 40 or 50, why isn't it 0? Well, it's probably just because they got sick and they're on like cholesterol lowering medication and then they just ended up having another heart attack. Also, if you take a look at this graph, the lower you get, the less likely you are to have a heart attack anyway. So, like, what? It's just ridiculous. The people who have the lowest risk of a heart attack, they have the lowest cholesterol score. So what is he fucking talking about? This dude is just such a joke. It's insane.
On this last week, I actually watched this. That's why I was upset and calling these studies dog shit, because I was like, the relative risk is way too low. And this is
Okay, so now he's gonna talk about relative risk. This is complete and utter sophistry. It's fucking hilarious.
In adequately designed studies, we can be reasonably confident about big relative risks. Sometimes we can only be guardedly confident about relative risks estimates of the order of 2.0.
Okay, so now this isn't like a hard and set number. Relative risks, you generally want to see like numbers approaching 2.0 or higher. But this has to be taken into context with absolute risk. So, if there's like, you have a 0.01% chance of developing lung cancer if you don't smoke. So the absolute risk of lung cancer is incredibly fucking low. But if you look at research on smoking and lung cancer, you can find risk ratios of like near 100 to 1. So really massively high fucking prevalence, or sorry, massively high risk ratio. But having a fucking risk ratio of like between 50 to 100, that translates to about a 1% increase in lung cancer risk. So your lung cancer risk of like 0.01 just ends up becoming 1%. So you have to take take these risk ratios into context. Just because the risk ratio is massively high, that doesn't actually make your absolute risk high. And conversely, if the disease prevalence, like heart disease, is massively high, it's almost 25%, a risk ratio of 1.3, which is typically considered non-significant, that massively increases your heart disease risk. That increases your absolute risk by about 10%. So these risk ratios have to be taken into context with absolute risk. If you're going to say, well, you need a risk ratio of at least 2 to show significance, well, okay, if we're going to play this game, well, then I could say, oh, well, smoking doesn't really increase your risk of lung cancer because it only increases your absolute risk by 1%. And then I could say, oh, well, like you see what I'm saying? It's a stupid statistical game. So these people like to flip-flop, and they want two things to be true at the same time. On the one hand, if you show research where, eating processed meat is linked with colorectal cancer, and then they'll say, oh, well, it only increases your absolute risk by 1%. Okay, well, if we're going to use that reasoning, then smoking isn't really a risk factor for lung cancer because it only increases your absolute risk by 1%. But then, in a context in like heart disease, they'll focus on relative risk ratio, and then they'll say, oh, well, the relative risk is too low, but it increases your absolute risk by fucking 10%. So it's this stupid fucking, it's just absolute sophistry. It's this dumb statistical game, and they flip-flop in between these two axioms. Oh, well, they'll focus on relative risk with things like heart disease, but then they'll focus on absolute risk for things like colorectal cancer. It's totally fucking dishonest.
Occasionally, we can hardly ever be confident about estimates of less than 2.0. And when estimates are much below 2.0, we are simply out of business. Epidemiologists have only primitive tools, which for small relative risks are too crude to enable us to distinguish between bias, confounding, and causation. And he also spoke about other reasons that studies are invalid. Is if it's not an observational study, we ignore it. It's a food question.
Wait, what? I don't even know where he's getting this information from. Is it an observational study? If it is yes, you can ignore it unless see number 3. Well, what are you talking about? It's not like epidemiological studies are useless. They have their own problems, but they're extremely valuable for actually taking a look at how these risk factors affect populations. Like, you can have tons of laboratory data showing, okay, well, something causes cancer, but unless it actually significantly affects a population, it's not something you should really worry about. So, what is this horseshit? Oh, is it an observational study? Oh, well, throw that out. Like, no, you can't just do that. And there are things like randomized controlled trials as well. Like, I don't get this.
Questionnaire, it's not reliable. The relative risk, what we just talked about, and then the dosing could be wrong, which means it could be unrealistic. And there could also be something wrong with the method, which I don't see here, at least to my understanding. So let's look at the heme iron studies he linked me.
I did not link the study to him, so he's lying here. Heme iron intake, dietary antioxidant capacity, and risk of colorectal edemas in a large cohort study of French women. I never linked this. So this is a study on heme iron intake and like colorectal disease. So I never linked this. Adenoma. I've never even heard. Adenoma? Adenoma? Okay, so it's a type of tumor, an adenoma. I never linked this.
Iron intake, colorectal cancer, French woman. Dietary.
I never linked this. Why is he claiming that I linked this? I think what he did was like bring up a bunch of random Google searches, and he's either mixing up this research with the research I actually linked him, or he's just deliberately lying.
Intake was measured by a semi-quantitative food history questionnaire. So that study's out the window.
I never fucking linked that, retard.
Iron and cancer risk.
Iron and cancer risk, systematic review and meta-analysis of the epidemiological evidence. Yeah, I did link this one. And they did find a small relationship with heme iron intake in certain cancers.
A systematic review and meta-analysis of the epidemiological evidence. Relative risk, 1.0 to 1.17. Relative risk is too low.
Okay, this relative risk shit is absolute sophistry. So, like, look, for something like lung cancer, that relative risk is way too low, 1.12, just because the rate of lung cancer is just tiny. Now, for something like colorectal cancer, it's a bit more significant. That would make the absolute risk, something like, go up to, like, almost an entire percent. So you have to keep these things into context. Like, if a relative risk of 1.08 would increase risk of colorectal, like absolute risk of colorectal cancer by almost 1%, well, then you'd have to say that smoking doesn't have a strong association with lung cancer because it only increases absolute risk of lung cancer by 1%. So if you're going to play that game, then you're going to have to concede that smoking isn't a significant risk factor for lung cancer. So again, you're just picking and choosing what you want to be significant. When it's something that has a high risk ratio, like smoking, you're saying, oh, well, you need a really high risk ratio. But when it's something like heart disease that has a really high prevalence and a low risk ratio will still associate with a high absolute risk of the disease. Oh, well, now you focus on fucking risk ratio rather than the actual prevalence of the disease. It's fucking hilarious.
We're out of business. Is heme iron associated with risk of coronary disease? Meta-analysis. Relative risk?
Relative risk.
Way too low.
So relative risk was 1.27, 27%. So prevalence of heart disease is 23% in the population. That means with a relative risk of 1.27, you're increasing the absolute risk by about 7%. So you'd go from an absolute risk of 23% to 30% with a risk ratio of 1.27. You think increasing absolute risk of a disease by 7%, that means the risk ratio is too low. Absolute fucking sophistry. Again, in the debate, he used cigarette smoking as an example, and he said, oh, well, cigarette smoking has a risk ratio of like 50. Okay, well, a risk ratio of 50 brings you from like 0.01% risk of a disease to 1% absolute risk. So, weird. When something raises disease risk by only 1%, oh, well, that's significant. But when something raises absolute risk of a disease by 7%, oh, suddenly that's insignificant. Absolute retardation. What you also have to keep in mind is there's a mathematical limit to these risk ratios. If heart disease prevalence is nearly 25%, that means the highest mathematically possible risk ratio would be 4. So you can't do this. You can't just say, oh, well, 1.27 isn't significant enough when the highest mathematical possibility is 4. So it's just horseshit.
Out of business. Dietary iron intake. Risk of type 2 diabetes. Relative risks? Way too low.
What was the relative risk? So the pooled risk ratio for type 2 diabetes mellitus for a daily increment of 1 milligram of heme iron was 1.16. So per milligram increase, it's associated with a 0.16 increase risk of diabetes. I'm not sure how prevalent diabetes is. Let's just do a quick Google search. Predicting absolute risk of type 2 diabetes. Okay, so men have an absolute risk of 10.9%. Let's just round it up. That's 11% absolute risk. That's pretty significant. So that means if you increase, that means a relative risk of 1.16, that would increase, risk ratio of 1.16, that would increase the absolute risk to like 12 or 13%. Again, that's not exactly insignificant.
Out of business.
And there were also other associations here. Let's see. Meta-analysis of 5 studies gave a pooled risk ratio for type 2 diabetes mellitus of 1.33, so that's even more significant. Again, with a high disease prevalence of 11% for type 2 diabetes, these risk ratios aren't insignificant. The pooled risk ratios for type 2 diabetes mellitus in individuals with the highest versus lowest intake of ferritin levels was 1.7. So, again, he's just taking things out of context and just playing this retarded statistics game where oh, well, if the disease prevalence is low, I'll resort to talking about absolute risk, but if the disease prevalence is really high, then I'll just focus on risk ratio. So this is what these fucking people do.
Low, out of business. Okay, so I'm going to put all those studies in the comments. I'm going to put everything in the comments for you guys. Don't worry about that.
Okay, so oxidation of low-density lipoprotein by iron at lysomal pH, implications for atherosclerosis. Never linked him this study. So this is iron sulfate. This study was conducted using iron sulfate. Iron sulfate is a form of iron that's found in supplements. And the point of the study was to see whether or not iron sulfate causes oxidation of LDL particles, and they found that it does. So they just wanted to see whether or not they could show, in a laboratory setting, whether or not iron supplementation could, be a risk factor for LDL oxidation and subsequent heart disease risk. And they found that was the case. Now, I never linked this research to him, so I don't know why the fuck he's bringing it up.
But this was the study that he based his whole argument off of.
No, I didn't base my argument off of this study. I never linked you this study. You are fucking lying.
And he said that heme iron causes oxidation. They didn't use heme iron in this study.
Yeah, they didn't use heme iron in this study. I never fucking linked this study. What fucking point are you trying to make?
They used iron sulfide or something, so I don't know why he was saying that. If I read the study...
I never linked you the study. So, again, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Or if he read the study, he would know that. So he lied about literally everything.
I didn't lie about anything. I didn't link you the study. You were the one lying here.
In regards to this heme iron thing. He had no clue about heme iron, and
this is so
method
funny.
for this study and the materials are the problem. So they isolated LDL from plasma from 4 healthy people, and then
let's see. How much? So LDL. What is it? 1.019 to 1.063 grams per milliliter. Was isolated by sequential, okay, I don't even know what the fuck some of this shit is. But basically, the point of the study was to see whether or not the iron found in iron supplements would cause LDL to oxidize, and it turns out it does. So, what does this have anything to do with my claim that heme iron is a pro-oxidant and it causes the oxidation of LDL particles? This doesn't disprove that claim. Just Googling a random fucking study on heme iron supplementation and LDL oxidation, that doesn't disprove this claim, you fucking lying moron.
people, and then they took it at 250, I believe this is, what is this, microliters? Yeah, it's a microliter, which is a millionth of a liter. And then I believe this is microgram, which is, microgram, yeah, it's 1 millionth of a gram. So I'm very unfamiliar with these measurements. But FeSO4, which is the iron that they oxidize
iron sulfate
LDL within a centrifuge, is iron sulfate, and that has nothing to do with non-heme iron, as ferrous sulfate does not interact with heme iron. Absorbs.
He's literally Googling shit on his fucking computer. He doesn't know what any of these terms mean. What the fuck? This dude has problems.
In humans. So these are two very...
So, yeah, okay, so he linked a study non-heme iron as ferrous sulfate, so an iron supplement does not interact with heme iron absorption in humans. So they're basically saying iron supplementation doesn't reduce absorption of heme iron. What the fuck does that have to do with my claim that heme iron is a pro-oxidant and it causes the oxidation of LDL? He doesn't know what the hell he's talking about or what he's reading.
Very different things. So the iron they used in this study is irrelevant.
I never linked this study, retard.
So this, because of the iron they used, the study is irrelevant. And even if we...
Good, I never linked it. What the fuck point are you trying to make?
Entertain the idea that it was heme iron.
I wasn't trying to say it was heme iron because I never linked this fucking study, you moron.
The method they're using of spinning this in a centrifuge in this concentration with this much iron.
You just claimed that you don't know, you're not familiar with these measurements, so I don't know why you're trying to say this isn't biologically significant or relevant.
It's such an unrealistic amount of...
You just said you're not familiar with these measurements. So how the hell could you know whether or not these are biologically relevant concentrations of these minerals and nutrients?
Iron. It would be, I think, I could be wrong on this, but to my understanding, the dosing on this is like, it's like the equivalent of eating like 20 steaks a meal.
You don't know that because you just admitted you're not familiar with these measurements and whether or not it's biologically relevant.
It's insane. A worth of iron.
Prove that. What proof do you have? You're just making that claim. I'm not familiar with any of this type of shit, so I can't say either way. But if you're going to make that claim, then prove it.
Worth of iron.
Like I'd lean more towards it not being biologically relevant because really the whole point of the study was to show whether or not iron supplementation could possibly cause LDL oxidation, and they found that was the case.
It's not heme iron, and that's not even. It doesn't matter because it's not heme iron. And then I just showed one study showing that
association between heme and non-heme iron intake and serum ferritin in healthy young women. What does that? Let's see. Where's that study he linked? Heme iron low risk ratio. Okay, that's the study I linked. That's the study I linked. That's the study I linked. Positives of iron? Association between heme and non-heme iron intake and serum ferritin in healthy women. Let's see. The study demonstrates that both heme and non-heme iron, as well as adequate dietary energy, are associated with normal iron status in young women, and that restrained eaters may be at greater risk of low iron status. This has literally... This is... Wow. This is a study about women who bleed, they have periods, they lose iron. It was just looking at what sources of iron are best for maintaining healthy iron status in women who have a significant enough menstrual flow where they're at risk of iron deficiency. This has nothing to do with the fucking topic. Retardation. So he doesn't actually understand what he's fucking reading, and he kind of makes assumptions in his head what these studies are actually about.
That young women are usually deficient and they need more heme iron.
No, young women aren't usually deficient. The study just found that women who have higher menstrual flow, consuming heme iron is associated with a higher ferritin level. And that's because it bypasses regulatory mechanisms. So this doesn't mean heme iron is a healthier source of iron. It just means women with a heavier menstrual flow, they tend to have normal iron levels when they eat heme iron, but not non-heme iron. But that still doesn't mean it's a healthier source of iron. Again, just beyond stupid.
And then another study showing, you know how iron is important for health, all living organisms as it participates.
Yeah, guess what? There's a healthy range for the amount of iron you should have in your blood. If it goes above that range, you're increasing risk of heart disease, diabetes, cancer. Especially, well, the only way this actually occurs is if you're eating heme iron. It bypasses your body's regulatory mechanisms. If you're consuming non-heme iron, your body regulates iron absorption through your intestines. If it's heme, it bypasses those regulatory mechanisms, and you can easily have too much iron in your system. And heme iron is a pro-oxidant, again, catalyzes the production of N-nitroso compounds, which are extremely potent carcinogens. Also causes LDL particles to oxidize, so it increases risk of heart disease and diabetes. Where's the evidence against this? You're just linking irrelevant fucking data that has nothing to do with this. Review on iron and it's important for human health. This literally has nothing to do with whether or not heme iron is safe for human consumption.
In a wide variety of metabolic processes. So, as much as I would like to apologize for my performance on it, it could have been a lot worse. And either way, even if I prepared for this, I don't think I would have been prepared. If you would have linked me the studies ahead of time.
Even if I was prepared, I don't think I would have been prepared. Okay.
This is what would have happened. What did it take me, like 5 minutes to go over all that stuff? So, thank you guys.
Frank, you misinterpreted data. You claimed that I linked irrelevant studies that I never fucking linked you to begin with, and you did not prove your claim that heme iron is not a pro-oxidant.
Thank you guys for watching. I will link all that
Ridiculous.
stuff in the description. The Frankie the Face stuff. Oh, the makeup check. So you guys not wearing makeup.
That actually really surprised me. I thought he was wearing makeup, but it turns out he's just, a weird freak who has a very strange, odd look to him. Let's go back to Twitter and look at the DMs he sent me, because I think a lot of you would actually think some of this shit is hilarious. I don't know what to do at the moment with your very hateful group of vegans harassing me. If you have a solution, let me know. Otherwise, I'll have to see if YouTube can help me. I can't have hundreds of people commenting demeaning shit on my videos because they're vegan. If this was a fair debate and didn't go as it had, I would assume this harassment wouldn't be there. These are all people who have never commented on my channel before, and it is ranging from bullying, harassment, to accusing me of being gay. Discrimination. So if you want to work something out, let me know, but I will be contacting the options tonight. So I think here he's like trying to threaten me, saying that if I don't take my video down, he's going to contact YouTube and they'll try to do something, but obviously these are all comments. I have no fucking control of what people fucking comment on his channel. I tried to maintain my integrity and some professionalism in the interview, not bringing up and negative things about you, your medical history, negatives of a vegan diet, etc., under the assumption I wouldn't be getting this response. So basically he's saying, if I did know that people would call me gay in the comment section, I would have made personal attacks against you during the debate. Like, what? If you get back to me before tonight with some options, otherwise I'll make my own as I usually do. So he's saying he's going to make a response like the one response we just went through where he was calling me a liar. So then I asked, what do you mean the debate wasn't fair? I gave you ample time to speak and prepare beforehand. If you don't like the comments, then delete them, block people, and set up a comment filters on your channel, and I gave him a link on how to do that. Then I told him, stop being a crybaby. Nobody can bully and harass you online. He's ultimately the one who chooses to look at these comments and shit and you can set up a filter. Then he said you were disrespectful and misleading during the debate, and your viewers calling me a makeup-wearing tranny faggot isn't exactly what I thought I was getting myself into. I'll let YouTube decide. So again, he's like basically threatening to report me to YouTube unless I take the video down. Then he said, you said the topics would be heart disease and heme iron. No, if we go up here, I said I'd be interesting in debating the health consequences of a carnivore diet, including heart disease, diabetes, and cancer, and I'd like to debate the ethical principles of veganism. So, what the fuck do you mean? You said the topics would be heart disease and heme iron. No, I never said that. Then he said not arterial plaques in Egyptian mummies and oxidation of iron sulfate, not sulfite, in a centrifuge. I never linked you fucking research about iron oxidation in a fucking centrifuge. Like, what is he fucking talking about? Also, I think your viewers are kind enough to be the first people to use the N-word on my channel. I'll be sure to highlight that in a video. Like, nobody fucking cares. People call me fucking nigger every day. I don't give a shit. Why is this guy such a fucking crybaby? Like, it's funny. All these people who say, oh, well, killing animals is fine, I'm a badass, I slit animals' throats, and then, people are calling me mean names online. Can you do something about this? Can you delete your videos so people stop calling me mean words? Like, holy shit. I should challenge him to a fucking MMA match. Then I just told him I wasn't disrespectful or misleading, and I pointed out the fact that you claimed heart disease didn't occur in pre-agricultural hunter-gatherers, and I proved that it did. And then I said also, no one cares if people say mean things to you in the comment section. Everyone has to deal with that, including me. So then he said, no, I don't consider you a respectful person. Also, since you're such an intelligent guy, I don't think I have to explain any further. The problem I have is that you're framing this as a debate and fair argument, which it is not. That is why I'm going to report any discrimination or negative comments. So again, he's like complaining about people saying mean words to him online, and he's like essentially threatening to try to take my video down if I don't, if I don't like take it down myself. So if someone says vegan gains rules, you're a stupid fairy faggot, it's at YouTube's discrimination. Again, threatening me to like take my video down, or else he'll report me to YouTube. And the title of that video should not be carnivore diet debate, it should be heart disease and heme iron debate. Like, then I said, that's great, Frank. I have nothing to do with people making fun of you, so you can complain all you like. And then he said, well, I'm about to post a video response in half an hour. Might be important for you to respond for any shred of integrity that remains. God. Then I just started fucking with him. Hope you don't cry after I make my response. Then he said, what, where you lie and make blanket statements just like you did in the debate, regardless of whether or not you make a response, it doesn't remove your dishonesty and lack of character. It's why your YouTube channel is stagnated. You don't have the humility and objectiveness to obtain a variety of audience. This guy has only 5,000 subs. Like, and he's been on YouTube for, I think, as long as I have been on YouTube. So this guy is a fucking idiot. I literally showed the Twitter topic saying that we would discuss the carnivore diet in relation to those topics, not mummies and atherosclerosis or iron sulfate, retard, oxidation and exogenous LDL. I never fucking linked you research on oxidation of iron sulfate. Why does he keep saying this? Also, you talking shit about my subs has no merit because you wouldn't have reached out to me if you didn't understand my interaction / viewership was equivalent of some 100K plus channels. No, you're the one who reached out to me, moron. You sent me an email. I'm not going to show that right now because there's no way to, not show his email address. If somebody leaks that, it's considered harassment and I could get a strike on my channel. But he reached out to me first. Then I just messaged him on Twitter, heard you want to debate. The only reason I fucking did that was because a lot of people were asking me to do a response to him. And since he offered to have a debate, I was like, okay, well, might as well just, use this punching bag for some easy views. Like, he doesn't get the viewership of some 100K channels. He
Most people are
struggles
afraid
to hit 5,000 views a video. Yeah, most of his videos don't even hit 5,000 views. So, like, tell me, what channel that has 100,000 subs, how many of them get views like this? None. People with 100 plus thousand subs, they don't struggle to get 5,000 views a video. And then I just explained to him again, you claimed that pre-agricultural hunter-gatherers didn't develop heart disease when clearly they did. That's why I brought up the horse study. And then I claimed I never linked you research about iron sulfate. Iron sulfate is a form of iron found in iron supplements. I gave you research on heme iron and its relation to heart disease, diabetes, and cancer. Then he said method of CT scan on mummies is inadmissible. Well, no, it's not that it's inadmissible. It's that it has to be supplemented with, what's the word? You have to have tissue data to confirm the findings, like, beyond any reasonable doubt. But again, like, Frank, if you're going to claim that the CT scans are totally bullshit, well, you have to provide tissue data to prove that the CT scans are bullshit. Right now, that's the best evidence we have. You can claim that, okay, well, maybe the less obvious evidence of atherosclerosis might not actually be there, and that might be able to be confirmed by a tissue sample. But the gross evidence of atherosclerosis is likely actually there. It would be good if they had tissue samples to confirm, but as of right now, the best research we have are the CT scans, and you don't have any evidence. So, what are you going to rely on? Let's see. Your malnourished brain is lacking the ability to differentiate between inflammation, consequences from heart disease, and the normal physiology of atherosclerosis. So here he's trying to claim that atherosclerosis is a normal physiological consequence of just being alive. Humans just develop atherosclerosis, and like I mentioned before earlier, he's separating atherosclerosis kind of into two categories. Basically, he's saying there's a normal physiological occurrence of atherosclerosis, but when you add in like inflammation and other confounding factors, there's like true quote-unquote atherosclerosis where it will become like clinically significant and result in like a heart attack. That there's just atherosclerosis. There aren't like two separate categories, and atherosclerosis is not a normal physiological, it's not a part of normal human physiology. Atherosclerosis progresses when your LDL cholesterol score goes above 70 milligrams per deciliter. So it's just not a normal consequence of aging. Then I asked, what evidence do you have that atherosclerosis is an inevitable consequence of our biology? Then he says, because they have various degrees of marbling in their arteries. That's not evidence. Just because different people have different levels of atherosclerosis progression, that doesn't mean it's a normal consequence of aging. Then I explained to him, yeah, that's because, like, infant children, I think he mentioned here, yeah, somewhere, so he said, so babies have poor lifestyle choices, so he's basically saying, okay, well, infant children have evidence of atherosclerosis, so how could atherosclerosis, like, not be a normal part of human physiology? That's because mothers, they eat too much saturated fat and cholesterol, and then while their babies are still inside of them, the children end up developing the very early beginning stages of atherosclerosis. Then he linked me this study, preliminary and early stages of atherosclerosis in childhood. Well, again, this only proves that atherosclerosis starts in childhood. It doesn't prove that it's a normal part of human physiology. Then he said cholesterol is a waxy fat-like substance that's found in the cells in your body. Yeah. Your body needs some cholesterol to make hormones and vitamin D, blah, blah, blah. Frank, there's a healthy range of atherosclerosis, and we already know what that is. I linked him this. This study was actually conducted by Lauren Cordain, the insane, paleo retard guy. The guy who says saturated fat isn't bad for you. He did this study, and he found that the healthy, normal, physiologically normal cholesterol range is between 50 to 70 milligrams per deciliter, where atherosclerosis does not occur. So, if atherosclerosis doesn't occur when your cholesterol levels are within the healthy, normal physiological range, then clearly atherosclerosis is not a normal physiological process in humans. Then he accused me of believing in flat Earth-like spherage, even though I've made fun of spherage for being a flat earther. Then he said, my problem is that you literally lied and did not read the studies you presented and manipulated the debate to be in your favor from someone who doesn't see through your bullshit. And then I asked him, what did I lie about? And how did I lie and manipulate? And then he said, the proof is that atherosclerosis is a physiologically normal process, is that it is evident in any group of people we look at without the mortality risk of heart disease. Again, there's a difference between disease prevalence and mortality from the disease. You could have a diabetes prevalence of 100%. That doesn't mean everyone's going to die from the disease. Very few people could end up dying from the disease. That is the case with prostate cancer. Prostate cancer, very few people actually die from it. So are you going to say prostate cancer is a normal physiological process in the human body because very few people die from it? No. Heart disease is extraordinarily prevalent across all societies. It's just that in some societies, the actual rate of death from heart disease is lower, and that's because of various confounding variables. But the actual prevalence of the disease is extraordinarily common. Let's see. Then he says, and why? Then I said, and why are you changing the topic when you were arguing whether atherosclerosis is a physiologically normal process in humans? Then he said, I already explained those things in my response video, and you can get the answer from reading the comments. And then I said, no, just because there are some people who aren't dying from it, that doesn't mean it's physiologically normal. Then he started talking about how he was prepared to talk about the topics related to the carnivore diet, not dead mummies and hunter-gatherer groups. Dude, just because you don't know anything about these fucking topics, that doesn't mean I was being dishonest. As you said, dickhead, my point is that confounding factors of modern lifestyle is the reason for heart disease. Frank, you linked me research proving that the Maasai have extraordinarily high prevalence of heart disease. It's just that they have relatively low rates of death from heart disease. So I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Then he said, post-mortem changes in the structure of arteries cannot be examined without actual dissection of the corpse. Yes, it can. It's just that tissue samples would confirm the findings of the CT scan. Then I asked, you still haven't provided evidence that atherosclerosis is not a disease and it's only a normal process of aging. Then he said, I have 2 more studies in my debunk video showing that they had lower rates of it. The proof is that it occurs in everyone to some degree. And, yeah, that's because everyone eats a terrible diet. That's the only reason everyone has it. Everyone has buildup in their arteries, whether it is inflammatory or not will change the severity, so he doesn't even understand what fucking inflammation is, clearly. Again, what affects the severity of the disease is the amount of cholesterol in your arteries, how much of that cholesterol becomes modified via oxidation or some sort of inflammatory process. Endothelial cell damage is also a risk factor, which is why smoking, which causes endothelial cell dysfunction, that's why it's also associated with atherosclerosis. So yes, there are confounding variables that affect the severity of the disease, but that doesn't mean it's a normal physiological, occurrence in humans. And I linked him research already showing that it doesn't occur when your serum cholesterol score is below 70 milligrams per deciliter. Then I just asked him again, where's your evidence that it's a physiologically normal process? Then he just repeats again, it is a physiologically normal process. He just admitted everyone has it. Just because everyone has it, that doesn't mean it's a physiologically normal process. It just means everyone's eating a terrible diet. Then I explained to him, high prevalence of a disease does not mean it's physiologically normal. Then he just said, oh, I'm done with this conversation. Then he made some joke about, not being able to... He's trying to masturbate and he can't get an erection while looking at Jasmine. Then he accused me of looking at rabbit research. And then I linked him the study that shows a clear linear relationship between cholesterol score and rate of progression of atherosclerosis. So, again, right here, once LDL, they found 75 milligrams per deciliter was the cutoff point where they could not predict any changes in the progression, or they couldn't predict any average annual plaque increase. So, this perfectly aligns with Lauren Cordain's research that 50 to 70 milligrams per deciliter is the healthy normal physiological range. Once you go above that range, atherosclerosis progresses, and the higher you get, the faster it progresses. So, no, it's not a normal physiological process in humans. And I asked him again, where's the evidence? He still doesn't provide it. Then he said, I've already given you debate points to talk on, not giving away any more if you decide to ask for another. You can't win a fair debate mediated by someone else, with clear guidelines beforehand. So then I said, well, Frank, if you want to prove me wrong, we can have a debate on your channel. You can decide on the debate topics, and you can even get someone to moderate. And I'll just move that down so you can see he hasn't responded back. Then I just called him a moron. You can make up any excuses you want, but I can refute all of your baseless claims. And I asked him again, where's your evidence that atherosclerosis is a physiologically normal process in the human body? And he didn't respond back. So I said, I'll debate you again. We can do it on your channel. You can pick all of the debate topics. You can even get any moderator you want. And he hasn't responded back to me because he knows he's wrong. He knows he's a fucking idiot, and he knows he has no chance in winning a debate against me. So, I gave him an opportunity to redeem himself, where he can have a fair debate where he could destroy me, but he's not interested because he knows he's a fucking idiot and he knows he's wrong. So, that'll be it for the debate. I'll today's live stream. I'll just answer any comments you have. I know how to unlock and access locked research papers with paywalls for free. Let me know if you're interested via Patreon or email. My Twitter is blocked. Is your Patreon named Desh? I'll contact you about that. Thanks for the tip, though. Bro, off topic, have you considered doing a vid on bullfighting? There isn't a good one out there yet. No, I haven't really considered it. Like, I mean, everyone fucking knows how terrible bullfighting is. Like, every few weeks you see an article in the paper, or not the paper, but you know, online somewhere where like a bullfighter like gets trampled or severely injured or killed. And these aren't like vegan biased websites. They're like, oh yeah, fucking dipshit deserved it. Hate that fucking cunt. And these are all meat eaters, so I don't know if it's a great use of my time, just because everyone fucking universally hates bullfighting. It's just like the retarded fucking Spanish people who are interested in it. So I don't think I'll make an actual video about bullfighting. You know what? The MMA challenge might be best. Trying to reason with a nitwit like this might not make the same impact as your foot. Frank is built like a fucking twink. So let me find a photo of him. He's built like a little fucking 12-year-old child. Like, there's just no way he'd have any fucking chance. Yeah, he's built like a fucking 12-year-old. He looks like a 12-year-old boy. So, yeah, there's no way in hell he'd ever agree to have an MMA match with me. He'd be... It would literally be like me fighting a child. There's just nothing he can do against me. I think, like, there's no way I'd even be able to make it to his weight class. I mean, he's, like, a short, skinny fucking kid. So, yeah, what do I have? Like, at least 50 fucking pounds on him? So, he'd never agree to do an MMA match. Okay, I'll look for your name on Patreon. Deshal Hemachardirer. I'll message you later for that, and I'll just write it down here. Chris Kresser versus Dr. Joel Kahn on the Joe Rogan podcast on September 27th. I'm so looking forward to that. Chris Kresser is going to get fucked in the ass, long dick, prison style by fucking Joel Kahn. It is going to be so bad. Finally, somebody's going to call out Chris Kresser on the Joe Rogan Experience. It's going to be so embarrassing. All right, that'll be it for the live stream. Today, I think I'm just going to take it easy and live stream on my this channel, my gaming channel. And I'll just make an announcement on my main channel that I'll be streaming all day long today. I had a really long fucking weekend. I got out that Worst of the Fitness Industry video. That was so long and brutal to fucking make, not including writing the script. That took me, yeah, that took me 17 hours to shoot and edit. That was really brutal. So basically, all day long, I was just working on making this video. And I didn't finish until 8 in the morning. I just slept all day on Saturday, and then on Sunday I had to go out for the Veg Fest. But I'm still kind of exhausted from all of that. So I just want to take like another day off, like to have a break. And then after today, I'll probably make a response to Frank Tufano. I do want to do some video game reviews too. I want to do a video game review for Spider-Man, the new one for PS4. It's fucking awesome, by the way. I fucking love it. It's a great game. And I'm going to stream it today. So, what's it called? I'll be doing that today. I'll be streaming Spider-Man PS4 on my gaming channel all day today. Also, good news is that I've gotten to the point where this channel can be reviewed again for monetization. So that's good. Hopefully in the next like few weeks, this channel can become monetized, and while I'm streaming, I can accept donations and I can get ad revenue again. So I'll have a bit more of an incentive to keep streaming and shit on this channel. So Oh yeah, and this week I will be working on what's it called? What I've learned worst of the fitness industry. That one will be a Patreon exclusive for about a week before it's like released publicly. So I will be working on that this week. Because of other commitments I have, it might not be until like Friday that I'm able to get it out. But I'm going to try my absolute best to get it done by Friday. These videos do take a lot of time, a lot of work. They're fucking difficult to do, but I'm going to try my best to get it out by Friday. So, yeah, that's it for the updates, and that's what's going to happen today. I am going to take a bit of a break before I start streaming again. I'm just going to hop on Discord and chat for a while and make some food and shit, and then I'll start streaming. I thought it was monetized. You mean Vegan Gains Live? Your main channel is monetized? Yeah, my main channel is monetized. It's Vegan Gains Live, this channel that isn't monetized right now. YouTube changed their guidelines for monetization. You need a certain amount of watch hours per like year or something to become monetized. I went under that because I wasn't uploading to this channel, but now I'm over that again because I've been streaming more. And now it's being reviewed for monetization. They said it takes about 4 weeks, so hopefully in the next few weeks this channel could be monetized again. So, yeah, that's it for the update, guys. I will be on Discord in a few minutes if any of you want to chat and talk. So, thanks for checking out the live stream. Again, thanks to all of you donating on Patreon. I have a fair amount of new patrons, too, so big thanks to the new guys who've popped in. Really appreciate it. If you want to know my thoughts on homosexuals and LGBTQ, then you should hop on Discord with me. And, oh, you did a review on that sugar film, but I can't find it. Can you re-upload it? And also, would you do a personalized birthday message for someone who you made vegan? I asked Jasmine. She said she'll ask you and maybe set up a Patreon tier. Okay, sure. I'll get on that as well. And Jasmine will tell me the details. So thanks for checking out the stream again, guys. And I'll be streaming in about an hour, hour and a half-ish, and I'll be on Discord in a few minutes. So I'm just going to stop the stream now. I don't, like, I just want to... OBS has that thing where if you stop it right away, it, like, cuts you off. So I'm just going to wait a few seconds. And I think I'm good now.